She was mocked for her cheap dress until the billionaire said, "She's my wife." The light from crystal chandeliers sparkled like fallen stars, casting a glow over the opulent wedding hall. White roses adorned every corner, from the arched walkway to the banquet tables, creating a fairy tale-like scene. The lilting notes of a violin blended with the lively chatter and laughter of hundreds of guests, all awaiting the sacred moment. At the center stood Isabel Hartley, 26, motionless in her pristine white wedding gown. The soft silk dress hugged her slender frame, its long train gliding gently across the marble floor. Her brown eyes shimmered with hope, her heart racing at the thought of a future with the man she had loved for 5 years, Derek. Isabel, a talented interior designer, always carried creativity and passion within her. She wasn't the type to dream of lavish weddings, but Derek had convinced her they deserved a perfect, momentous day. "You deserve to be admired by the world," he had said, and Isabel had smiled, letting him guide this dream. Now standing before countless eyes, she felt overwhelming happiness, though a faint unease lingered. Derek had seemed distant today, but she told herself it was just the pressure of the wedding. Her father, Thomas Hartley, stood beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" he whispered warmly. Isabel nodded, her smile radiant. She stepped onto the aisle, her gaze fixed on the altar where Derek stood, or should have stood, but the altar was empty. Only the best man, James, was there, his face panicked, clutching a small piece of paper. The music slowed, then stopped entirely. The guests began to murmur, curious eyes turning toward Isabel. "What's going on?" Her mother, Eleanor, called from the front row, her voice trembling. James stepped forward, handing the paper to Isabel's father. Thomas skimmed it, his face paling. He looked at Isabel, his eyes filled with anguish. "Belle," he called softly, his voice breaking. Isabel's heart clenched. She snatched the paper from her father's hand, her trembling fingers unfolding it. Derek's handwriting appeared, brief but sharp as a blade. "I'm sorry, Belle, I can't do this. I don't deserve you." The world around Isabel crumbled. The crowd's whispers became a deafening hum in her ears. She stood frozen, her eyes locked on the note, as if staring long enough would make it disappear, as if this were just a nightmare. But it wasn't. Derek, the man she loved, the man she trusted, had abandoned her on their wedding day in front of hundreds. Humiliation, pain, and emptiness surged, nearly choking her. "Belle, are you okay?" Her father gripped her shoulder, but Isabel didn't respond. She couldn't. The crowd's whispers grew louder, their questions and gossip like knives piercing her pride. "Where's the groom? Did he run off? Poor girl." Her mother burst into tears, covering her face, while cousins rushed to console her. Isabel wanted to flee, to vanish from the pitying stares, but her feet felt nailed to the floor. The wedding dress, once making her feel like a princess, now weighed on her like imprisoning armor. She clutched the note tightly, tears threatening to spill, but she bit her lip, forcing them back. She couldn't break down, not here, not in front of everyone. At that moment, a deep, cold voice cut through the chaos. "If she still wants to get married, I'll be the groom." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the man who had spoken. He stepped forward from the back rows, tall and imposing, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. Julian Blackthorne, the renowned billionaire, and head of the Blackthorne Hotel empire, emerged like a shadow amidst the ceremony's dazzling light. His piercing blue eyes were icy, his angular face expressionless, but something in his voice silenced any objections. Isabel looked up, her eyes meeting his. She had met Julian a few times when she worked on an interior design project for one of his hotels. He was always cold, distant, a man who seemed detached from ordinary emotions. But now he stood there, staring directly at her, as if challenging the entire world. "What did you say?" her father asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Julian didn't break eye contact with Isabel. "I said, if Miss Hartley still wants to complete this ceremony, I'll stand beside her." The crowd held its breath. Isabel's mother whispered to her sister, "He's insane." A few guests chuckled, thinking it was a joke. But Julian didn't smile. He approached Isabel, each step exuding confidence and authority. He stopped before her, bowing slightly as if awaiting her response. Isabel's heart pounded. She didn't understand why Julian was doing this, why a man like him would intervene in the worst moment of her life. But in his eyes, she saw something. Not pity, but a strange resolve, as if he truly meant to pull her from this abyss. She took a deep breath, her hands tightening around Derek's note. The humiliation still burned, but a small flame of defiance and pride flickered within her. She didn't want Derek to win, didn't want this day to end in her defeat. She lifted her head, meeting Julian's gaze. "Fine," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Let's have the wedding." The crowd gasped. Her father's jaw dropped. Her mother nearly fell from her chair. But Isabel no longer cared. She had chosen this path, however insane it seemed. And when Julian extended his hand, she placed hers in it, stepping onto the altar, ready to face the unimaginable. The wedding hall, once radiant with light and white roses, was now steeped in an atmosphere of chaos. The murmurs of hundreds of guests rose like a wave, surging then subsiding, as Isabel Hartley, still in her stunning white wedding gown, held the hand of Julian Blackthorne, the man who had just declared he would replace the runaway groom. Isabel's brown eyes glinted with an unexpected resolve, though only minutes ago she had stood frozen, clutching Derek's cruel farewell note. Julian, towering in his black suit, his face as cold and unyielding as carved stone, stood beside her like an impenetrable wall. No one dared speak, but the crowd's eyes, ranging from curious to skeptical, bore into them both. Isabel's father, Thomas Hartley, stepped forward, his face flushed with shock and worry. He grasped his daughter's hand, his voice trembling but firm. "Isabel, do you want to stop? You don't have to do this. No one will blame you if you want to go home right now." His eyes shone with a father's protectiveness, but also with pain at seeing his daughter in such a predicament. Her mother, Eleanor, still hadn't recovered from the shock. She sat in her chair, supported by Isabel's sister, Clara, one hand clutching her chest as if trying to hold her breaking heart together. "Belle, are you insane?" she whispered, her voice faltering. "This man, you don't even know him." But Isabel seemed not to hear. Her gaze was locked on Julian, who stood unwavering. He didn't urge her, didn't explain, just waited silently, as if the entire world couldn't sway his decision. Isabel took a deep breath, the humiliation of Derek's abandonment still burning like a smoldering fire in her chest. She thought of the years with Derek, the nights curled up together on the sofa, the times he promised her the world. But it had all vanished with a single note. She didn't want this day to end in defeat, didn't want the pitying stares of the crowd to define her. And Julian. He was an enigma, a man she had only met briefly while working for his Blackthorne hotel chain. She had designed interiors for one of his luxury hotels, seen him in fleeting meetings where he always maintained a cold, distant demeanor. But now he stood here, offering his hand to pull her from the abyss. "I'm not running anymore," Isabel said, her voice trembling but resolute. She looked into her father's eyes, then turned to Julian. "Let's have the wedding." The crowd erupted, whispers exploding into fervent debates. "Is she serious? Julian Blackthorne? The billionaire? This is a joke, right?" But Isabel didn't care. She gripped Julian's hand tightly, feeling the strange steadiness of his warm palm amidst her emotional storm. Julian gave a slight nod, a gesture almost imperceptible, then led her to the altar. The officiant, an elderly priest with wide, shocked eyes, looked at them hesitantly. "Are we proceeding?" he asked, his voice uncertain. "Proceed," Julian replied, his deep voice firm and decisive, as if this were a business deal he had carefully considered. Isabel glanced at him, searching for any sign on his face, a smile, a hint of doubt. But there was nothing. Only his deep blue eyes, vast as the ocean, gazed at her with an intensity that made her heart race. The ceremony unfolded in a surreal atmosphere, as if it were all a dream. The priest recited the vows, his voice echoing in the hushed silence of the crowd. Isabel repeated her vows, each word like a knife slicing through her heart. "I, Isabel Hartley, take you, Julian Blackthorne, as my husband." She paused for a moment, the madness of the moment nearly overwhelming her. But she pressed on, her voice growing steadier. Julian, in contrast, recited his vows with absolute calm, as if he had been prepared for this moment all along. When the priest declared them husband and wife, a tentative clap broke out somewhere in the crowd, quickly spreading. Isabel didn't know if they were clapping out of admiration, curiosity, or simply because they didn't know what else to do. Julian leaned down, his lips brushing her cheek in a light, ceremonial kiss. Even in that moment, she sensed his restraint, as if he were deliberately maintaining an invisible boundary between them. The reception continued, but it was no longer a joyous celebration. Guests were awkward, unsure whether to offer congratulations or condolences. Isabel and Julian sat at the head table, but they barely spoke. She sipped a glass of champagne, trying to calm the trembling inside her. Julian, beside her, took a sip of whiskey, his eyes scanning the crowd like a panther surveying its territory. Finally, as the reception neared its end, he turned to her, his voice low. "Isabel," he said, addressing her by name for the first time since the ceremony began. "I don't know what you're thinking, but I want to make one thing clear." She looked up, her heart pounding. "What?" Julian leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers without flinching. "This marriage, it doesn't have to last forever. If you want a divorce in a few weeks, I'll agree. I'll ensure you lose nothing. Your reputation, your finances, anything. But first," he paused as if choosing his words carefully, "try living as my wife, just for a while." Isabel blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Live as your wife? What do you mean?" "I'm not asking you to love me," Julian replied, his voice calm but edged with something sharp. "Just stay. Be by my side. Appear as my wife. I won't force you into anything, but I want you to give this a chance." She stared at him, trying to decipher his true intentions. Why would someone like Julian Blackthorne, wealthy, powerful, a man who could have anyone he wanted, choose to marry a woman publicly abandoned? Why make this offer both generous and bizarre? But she didn't ask. Not because she didn't want to know, but because she was too exhausted, too drained to probe the mystery that was Julian. "All right," she said after a long silence. "I'll try." Julian nodded, no smile, but something in his eyes softened, if only for a moment. "Good. Tonight you can stay in the hotel's guest suite. Tomorrow I'll take you to my home." "Your home?" Isabel frowned. "You mean?" "My penthouse in Manhattan," he said as if it were obvious. "You're my wife. You'll live with me." Isabel opened her mouth to protest but stopped herself. She had agreed, had stepped onto this path. There was no turning back. She nodded, a mix of fear and curiosity swelling within her. She didn't know what awaited her, but one thing was certain: her life had changed forever. As the reception ended, Isabel walked out of the hall, hand in hand with Julian. The crowd still watched, their curious and judgmental eyes following their every step. But Isabel held her head high, though her heart remained heavy. She didn't know if she had just embarked on an adventure or the greatest mistake of her life. All she knew was that, beside this enigmatic man, she was betting everything: her pride, her heart, and her future. Julian Blackthorne's penthouse sat atop the highest floor of a gleaming glass tower in the heart of Manhattan, where the city's lights stretched out like a shimmering tapestry below. Isabel Hartley stepped into this space the morning after the wedding, a small suitcase in hand, feeling like a stranger lost in an alien world. The penthouse's interior was designed with ruthless minimalism: glossy black marble floors, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, cold white leather sofas, and abstract art pieces hanging like wordless riddles. There was no warmth, no superfluous detail. Everything exuded absolute control, a perfect reflection of Julian himself. For Isabel, who cherished cozy spaces with raw wood, linen fabrics, and soft golden light, this place felt more like a museum than a home. Julian led her through the expansive hallway, his voice low and curt. "Your room is at the end of the hall. Private bathroom, wardrobe already prepared. If you need anything, tell the housekeeper, Helen." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her, devoid of a smile. "I have a meeting in an hour. Are you all right?" Isabel nodded, though her mind was a whirlwind. "I'm fine," she replied, striving to keep her voice steady. Julian gave a slight nod, then turned and left, leaving her alone in the vast space. The sound of his shoes echoed on the marble floor, each step as precise as a clock's tick, before fading behind the private elevator's doors. Isabel stood there looking around, a wave of isolation washing over her. She had just become the wife of a billionaire, yet she had never felt so small. The first days of living together were a series of difficult adjustments. Julian was polite, even considerate, but he maintained an invisible distance. Breakfast was prepared by a private chef, but he often ate alone in his office or left before Isabel woke. When they met, usually at dinner, their conversations were rare and formal. "How's your work going?" he asked, cutting his steak with surgical precision. Isabel spoke about the interior design projects she was handling remotely, but he only nodded, never probing further. She wanted to break through that wall, to understand why he had chosen to marry her. But each time she considered asking, his icy gaze made her hesitate. Julian's world of luxury also overwhelmed Isabel. The housekeeper, Helen, an older woman with a discreet smile, appeared at just the right moment to bring tea, clean, or relay Julian's schedule. A private driver waited downstairs, ready to take Isabel anywhere, though she rarely left the penthouse. Her wardrobe was filled with designer dresses, Dior, Chanel, Valentino, that she was certain she hadn't chosen. "Mr. Blackthorne requested they be prepared," Helen explained when Isabel inquired. She looked at the dresses, feeling they belonged to someone else, a version of Isabel she didn't yet know. Still, Isabel refused to drown in the empty opulence. She set up her laptop in the living room, turning a corner of the dining table into a makeshift office, and continued working on her design projects. Sketches, color palettes, and ideas for interior spaces became her refuge. But each night, as the city lights streamed through the glass walls, she felt lonelier than ever. The penthouse, though beautiful, wasn't her home. And Julian, though her husband on paper, remained a stranger. One night, a nightmare dragged Isabel into darkness. In the dream, she stood again at the wedding altar. But this time, it wasn't just Derek who left. The entire crowd vanished, leaving her alone with his note. "I don't deserve you," Derek's voice echoed, blending with the mocking laughter of those no longer there. Isabel jolted awake, gasping, tears streaming down her cheeks. She sat up, hugging herself, trying to shake the lingering humiliation from the wedding day. Then she realized she wasn't alone. Julian sat in an armchair by her bed, in the dim light, his eyes glinting under the faint glow from the window. He wore a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, as if he'd been working late. Isabel blinked, hastily wiping her tears, embarrassed. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You were screaming in your sleep," he said, his tone low but without judgment. "I didn't want you to wake up alone." He leaned forward, placing a glass of water on the bedside table. "Drink. It'll help you calm down." Isabel took the glass, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't know what to say. This was the first time she'd seen another side of Julian, not the controlling, cold man, but someone gentle, more approachable than she'd imagined. "Thank you," she whispered, taking a sip. I'm okay now." Julian said nothing more. He stood, adjusted his shirt, and left the room, leaving Isabel with an indescribable feeling. He didn't ask about the dream, didn't offer comfort, but his presence alone had soothed some of her pain. For the first time, she wondered if, beneath that cold exterior, Julian hid a wounded heart like hers. An opportunity for Isabel to prove herself came in the second week, when Julian invited her to a charity gala hosted by the Blackthorne Corporation. "I need a companion," he said, handing her a sapphire blue evening gown. "You'll do well, won't you?" Isabel nodded, though she felt uncertain. The gala was held at a luxurious hotel where she had once designed the main lobby. Stepping inside, she was overwhelmed by the extravagance. Massive chandeliers, silk-draped tables, and guests in exorbitant attire. Julian, in a black tuxedo, looked like a king, effortlessly drawing every eye. Isabel, though stunning in her form-fitting gown, felt like an outsider. But she didn't let that stop her. When Julian introduced her to investors, she saw an opportunity. One of them, Richard Grayson, was seeking a designer for a new resort. Isabel seized the moment, confidently pitching her ideas. I envision a space that blends modern design with nature, she said, her eyes lighting up. Recycled wood, large glass panels to maximize natural light, and details inspired by local culture. She sketched quickly on a napkin, earning an impressed nod from Grayson. Julian, standing beside her, said nothing, but Isabel caught a flicker of surprise in his eyes. After the gala, as they returned to the penthouse, he broke their usual silence. "You did well," he said, his tone no longer as cold. "Grayson agreed to meet you to discuss details. It's a big project." Isabel smiled, feeling, for the first time, a small sense of belonging in Julian's world. "Thank you for giving me the chance," she replied. Julian looked at her, his gaze softening. "I didn't give you the chance. You took it." That moment marked a subtle shift in their relationship. Though distance remained, Isabel began to see Julian not just as a powerful man, but as someone who could respect her. And Julian, though he didn't say it, started to realize that the woman he married was more than a jilted bride. She was intelligent, resilient, and capable of standing as his equal in his world. But neither yet knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges as old wounds and buried secrets began to surface. Life in Julian Blackthorne's penthouse gradually settled into a familiar rhythm for Isabel Hartley, though it remained laced with emotional voids. She began to find a balance between her interior design work and her role as Mrs. Blackthorne in his opulent world. Yet despite small steps forward, the moments of Julian's tenderness during her nightmares, or the respect in his eyes at the charity gala, Isabel still sensed an invisible wall between them. Julian was a man of control, not in an overbearing way, but in how he governed his own emotions, keeping his heart locked behind a door Isabel didn't know how to open. One afternoon, while Julian was away on a brief business trip, Isabel decided to tidy her workspace in the penthouse's living room. She accidentally knocked a small wooden box off a nearby bookshelf. The box sprang open upon hitting the floor, revealing an old photograph, its edges slightly yellowed. Isabel bent to pick it up, and her heart seemed to stop as she looked at the image. A younger Julian, a rare, radiant smile on his face, standing beside a beautiful woman with shimmering blonde hair and bright blue eyes. They were embracing, a windswept beach in the background, happiness emanating from every detail. Isabel flipped the photo over and saw a handwritten text, "Julian and Sophia, Maldives, 2018. She sank onto the sofa, the photo trembling in her hands. Sophia. The name wasn't unfamiliar. She had overheard it once from one of Julian's employees while working on his hotel project. "Miss Sophia, Mr. Blackthorne's former fiancée," the person had said, quickly falling silent upon realizing their slip. Isabel had never pressed for details, assuming Julian's past was irrelevant to her. But now, staring at the photo, a sharp pain pierced her chest. Who was this woman? And why did Julian keep her picture, carefully tucked in a wooden box, like a cherished relic he couldn't let go of? She returned the photo to the box, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. When Julian returned late that evening, Isabel was sitting in the living room, the dim light casting shadows on her face. He paused at the door, immediately sensing the tension in the air. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his voice low and cautious, as he removed his coat and draped it over a chair. Isabel took a deep breath, striving to keep her tone steady. "I found a photo," she said, gesturing to the box on the table. "You and Sophia." Julian's face stiffened for a moment, his deep blue eyes darkening. He stepped forward, picking up the box, his fingers brushing lightly over the wooden surface, as if it held an entire lost world. "You shouldn't go through my things," he said, but there was no accusation, only a profound weariness. "I wasn't going through anything," Isabel replied, her voice sharper than intended. "It fell, and I think I have a right to know, Julian. I'm your wife, at least in name. Who was Sophia?" Julian looked at her, as if weighing whether to unlock the door to his past. Finally, he sat in the chair across from her, placing the box on the table. "Sophia was my fiancée," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "She died 4 years ago in a car accident. We'd been engaged for a year." Isabel felt her heart constrict. She hadn't expected an answer so heavy. I'm sorry," she whispered, but Julian raised a hand, signaling she didn't need to say more. "Don't apologize. You didn't know." He looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. I loved her, Isabel. Loved her in a way I thought I'd never love again. When she was gone, I lost everything. Not just her, but my faith in love, in life. I swore I'd never let myself hurt like that again. Isabel listened, her heart aching with both pain and empathy. She had never seen Julian so vulnerable, as if he were letting her glimpse the deepest, most guarded part of his soul. But then he turned to her, and his next words stunned her. But when I saw you standing there, on your wedding day, alone but resilient, I couldn't walk away. I don't know why, but I couldn't let you suffer alone. Julian's confession was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it moved her. He had chosen to save her, though he didn't have to. On the other, it planted a seed of doubt in her heart. She looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. So why did you marry me, Julian? She asked, her voice trembling. Because you pitied me? Or because I reminded you of her? Julian frowned as if the question caught him off guard. No, he said firmly. You're not Sophia. I'm not looking for her in you. But Isabel couldn't shake the unease. She stood, hugging herself, her eyes fixed on the photo on the table. Sophia was beautiful, confident, radiant, a woman who seemed perfect in Julian's eyes. And her? She was just a jilted bride, entering this marriage out of recklessness and hurt. Was she truly the one Julian wanted, or merely a shadow of his lost love? I need time, Isabel said, her voice hoarse. She left the living room, retreating to her bedroom and closing the door. Julian didn't follow, and she knew he wouldn't. He respected her space, but his silence only deepened her doubts. In the days that followed, Isabel grew more withdrawn. She continued her work and appeared beside Julian at necessary events, but her smiles were no longer genuine. Each time she looked at him, she wondered if he was comparing her to Sophia, if his heart was truly open to her, or still chained to the past. She began noticing small details. The way he sometimes stared into the distance when mentioning past travels. The way he avoided talking about love or the future. Each detail was a small cut to her confidence. Julian, though he noticed the change in Isabel, didn't press her to talk. He remained polite, attentive, but the distance between them seemed wider than ever. One evening, as they sat in silence over dinner, Isabel could no longer bear it. Do you really want me here, Julian? She asked, setting down her fork. Or are you just trying to do the right thing, because you feel guilty for me? Julian looked at her, his expression complex. I want you here, he said, but his voice lacked the conviction she craved. But I'm not good at talking about feelings, Isabel. I've never been good at it. She gave a bitter smile, standing and leaving the table. Maybe you should try, if you really want this to mean something. She walked away, leaving Julian with a pensive gaze, his hand tightening around his wine glass. That night, Isabel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy. She knew she was falling in love with Julian, not the powerful billionaire, but the man who sat by her during her nightmare, who quietly respected her talent. But that love was overshadowed by fear. Fear that she was merely a substitute. Fear that his heart would always belong to Sophia. And in that moment, Isabel realized that if she wanted to move forward, she would have to confront her own insecurities, or accept that this marriage might never be real. In the days following Isabel's discovery of Sophia's photo, the atmosphere in Julian Blackthorne's penthouse grew heavier than ever. Isabel tried to focus on her design work, but the nagging doubt that she was merely a shadow of Julian's lost fiancé gnawed at her mind. Julian, though aware of her change, maintained his distance, as if unsure how to bridge the invisible wall between them. But fate, with its cruel and unpredictable twists, thrust them into a situation that set their emotions ablaze. One afternoon, Isabel was working at a small cafe near the penthouse, a place she frequented to escape the suffocating luxury of their home. She was sketching plans for a new project when a familiar figure walked in. Derek, the man who abandoned her on their wedding day, stood there, wearing a worn jacket, his eyes filled with regret. Isabel froze, her heart pounding, not with love, but with a resurgence of old anger and pain. Isabel, Derek said, his voice hoarse, He approached and knelt before her table, ignoring the curious glances of other patrons. "I'm sorry, I panicked. I didn't know what I was doing when I left you. But I can't live without you. Please, give me another chance." Isabel stared at him, feeling as though she were looking at a stranger. The man who once meant the world to her now seemed small, weak. She gripped her pen tightly, her voice icy. "You had your chance, Derek, and you chose to walk away. I'm not that Isabel anymore." Derek grabbed her hand, but she yanked it back. "Belle, I know I was wrong, but you can't be serious about that billionaire, can you? He's just using you, turning you into his game." His words cut like a knife, not because they were true, but because they tapped into Isabel's deepest insecurity, that she didn't truly matter to Julian. She stood, ready to leave, when a deep voice rang out from the doorway. "She's my wife, and she'll never choose a coward like you again." Julian strode into the cafe, his tall frame commanding in a dark gray suit, his piercing blue eyes blazing with a rare fire. He didn't look at Isabel, his gaze locked on Derek as if he could burn him to ash on the spot. Patrons began to whisper, some raising their phones to record the scene. Derek shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "Your wife? She was supposed to be mine. You just swooped in when she was at her weakest." Julian advanced, each step radiating authority. "Weak?" he repeated, his voice cold as ice. "She's stronger than you'll ever understand, and certainly stronger than a man who runs from responsibility." He stopped in front of Derek, towering over him. "Leave, now." Isabel, though shocked by Julian's appearance, felt a surge of anger. She didn't need anyone to protect her, didn't need someone claiming her like a prize. She stepped forward, positioning herself between the two men, her eyes blazing. "Both of you, stop!" she snapped, her voice echoing, silencing the cafe. She turned to Julian. "I'm not a possession for you to claim in front of a crowd. I can handle my own problems." Julian's brow furrowed, clearly caught off guard by her reaction. Derek seized the moment to speak, but Isabel cut him off. "And you, Derek, get out before I call security. We're done." Derek backed away, muttering something, then left, leaving Isabel and Julian in a charged silence. She turned to Julian, still furious. "Why did you do that? Did you think I needed you to swoop in and save me?" Julian looked at her, and for the first time since they'd lived together, he seemed unsettled. He took a deep breath, his voice softening, almost a whisper. "I didn't think you needed saving. I was just afraid of losing you." His confession was like a gust of wind, blowing away Isabel's anger. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "Afraid of losing me?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Why would you think that?" Julian stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I saw him touch you," he said, his voice low, "and I realized I couldn't stand the thought of you going back to him. Not because I own you, Isabel, because I care about you." Isabel's heart raced. This was the first time Julian had spoken of his feelings, however awkwardly. She wanted to press further, to dig into what he'd just said, but the crowd's stares in the cafe stopped her. "Let's go home," she said, her tone softening. On the way back to the penthouse, they were silent, but the air between them was no longer cold. Something had shifted, however subtly. That evening, instead of their usual silent dinner, Isabel suggested they cook together. "I want to try making Italian," she said, smiling. "Dare to help?" Julian, though initially surprised, agreed. In the penthouse's sleek kitchen, they chopped vegetables, mixed sauce, and even bickered over how much garlic to use. When Julian spilled flour on his shirt, Isabel burst out laughing, and for the first time, she saw him laugh too. A genuine smile that lit up his face. "What's so funny?" he asked, feigning seriousness. "You look like the world's worst chef," she teased, and he retaliated by smearing a bit of tomato sauce on her nose. In that moment, they weren't a billionaire and a jilted bride, just two people enjoying each other's company. Another evening, they stood on the penthouse balcony, gazing at the city lights. The night breeze was cool, and Isabel shared stories of growing up in a small town, dreaming of becoming a designer. Julian listened, then surprised her by recounting his first days in New York as a young, ambitious man. They laughed, teased each other, and when Isabel shivered from the cold, Julian pulled her into his arms, holding her gently. "Don't let me scare you," he whispered. "You don't scare me," she replied, resting her head against his chest. "I'm just not used to this." On another occasion, caught in a rainstorm on their way home, instead of rushing for shelter, Julian pulled her into the street, letting the rain soak them both. "Dance with me," he said, and though Isabel laughed at the absurd idea, she let him lead. They twirled in the rain, laughing like children, and when he pulled her into an embrace, rain still falling, Isabel felt her heart warm. In that moment, she knew she was falling in love with him. Not the powerful tycoon, but Julian, the man who'd dance in the rain just to see her smile. These small moments, cooking, teasing, holding each other, were like bricks building a bridge between them. Isabel began to believe that Julian's care for her wasn't rooted in pity or memories of Sophia. And Julian, though still awkward with emotions, started to open up, bit by bit. But neither knew that greater challenges loomed as the past and the media threatened to unravel everything they were beginning to build. The warm moments between Isabel Hartley and Julian Blackthorne, from their clumsy cooking sessions, laughter on the balcony, to embraces in the rain, had kindled a spark of hope that their impulsive marriage could become something real. Isabel felt love blossoming in her heart, and though Julian remained reserved, his gaze softened when he looked at her, as if he too were learning to open up. But just as they began to find a shared rhythm, a media storm descended, threatening to shatter everything they had built. It started on a Wednesday morning as Isabel checked emails in the penthouse's living room. Her phone lit up with a message from an old friend. "Belle, are you okay? The press is talking about you." Curious, she opened the link, and her heart seemed to stop. A tabloid headline screamed, "Jilted bride or gold digger? The secrets behind Isabel's whirlwind marriage to billionaire Julian Blackthorne." The article painted Isabel as an opportunist, exploiting her vulnerable moment at the altar to trap Julian, dubbed the golden whale of high society. Words like gold digger, schemer, and money hunter were hurled at her like stones, accompanied by a photo of her in her wedding dress beside Julian, captioned with malice, "From abandoned bride to Mrs. Blackthorne, a meteoric leap." Isabel's face burned, her hands trembling as she scrolled to the comments. Hundreds of strangers, knowing nothing about her, left venomous remarks. "She's 26. She's just after his money. That wedding was obviously staged for fame. Julian Blackthorne must be blind to marry a woman like that." She tried to breathe deeply, but the humiliation of her wedding day, when Derek abandoned her, surged back, as if she were reliving the nightmare. She wanted to scream, to explain that she wasn't the person they thought, but who would believe her? Worse still, another article appeared the next day, featuring old photos of Isabel and Derek from years ago, when they were still happy. One showed them embracing on a beach, Isabel beaming, Derek kissing her cheek. The headline stabbed like a dagger. "Still involved with her ex, the secrets of Isabel Blackthorne's marriage." The piece speculated that Isabel didn't just marry Julian for money, but was secretly in contact with Derek, manipulating both men for personal gain. There was no evidence, only fabricated claims and distorted photos. But that didn't stop the media from spreading the story like wildfire. Isabel felt her world collapsing. Not only was she slandered as a gold digger, but now she was accused of betrayal. She tried calling Julian, who was at his office, but he didn't answer. She texted, "Have you seen the news? We need to talk." Still no response. His silence cut deeper than the lies in the press. Did he believe the articles? Did he think she was truly a schemer, an untrustworthy woman? Her insecurities about her place in Julian's life, the fear that she was merely a shadow of Sophia, roared back stronger than ever. When Julian returned to the penthouse late that evening, Isabel was on the sofa, her phone flooded with notifications from friends and colleagues. She looked up, hoping for comfort in his eyes, but Julian seemed more distant than ever. He removed his coat, draped it over a chair, and said in a calm tone, "I've seen the articles. My PR team is handling it." Isabel blinked, waiting for more. A word of reassurance, a question about how she was coping. But he only walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat across from her, his eyes fixed on the glass. His silence was like a wall, and Isabel felt her heart shatter. "Don't you have anything to say?" she asked, her voice trembling. Do you believe what they're writing?" Julian frowned as if the question surprised him. "Believe?" he repeated, his voice low. "I don't care what the press says. They always make things up." "But you haven't said anything to me," Isabel replied, her voice rising with pain. "You didn't ask if I'm okay, didn't say you trust me. You just disappeared into your work, like this doesn't matter." Julian gripped his glass tightly, his eyes darkening. "I'm trying to protect you," he said, his tone firm. "I don't want to add fuel to the fire by reacting publicly. The PR team will shut this down." "Protect me?" Isabel stood, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't need your PR team, Julian. I need you. I need to know you're on my side, that you don't think I'm the trash they're describing." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "Or do you actually doubt me? Do you think I married you for money, that I'm still in touch with Derek?" Julian shot to his feet, his face tense. "Don't put words in my mouth, Isabel. I never said that." "But you haven't said you trust me," she shouted, tears finally spilling over. "You haven't said anything. And your silence, it feels like an accusation." Julian opened his mouth but then hesitated, as if unsure what to say. That hesitation was the final blow. Isabel felt her heart break. She had tried to believe this marriage could be real, that Julian cared for her, but his silence now seemed to confirm her worst fears. She wasn't Sophia, not his true love. She was just a mistake, a reckless decision he might already regret. "I can't do this anymore," Isabel whispered, her voice hoarse. She walked to the bedroom, opened a drawer and took out her wedding ring, the ring Julian had given her on that frantic wedding day. She stared at it, its silver glinting under the light, then placed it on the table, as if letting go of all hope. She packed a few personal items into a suitcase, ignoring the designer dresses and the lavish life Julian had provided. She just wanted to return to herself, to Isabel Hartley, the woman who didn't need saving. Julian stood at the bedroom door watching her pack. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but strained. "I'm leaving," Isabel replied, not looking at him. "I can't stay here, pretending everything's fine when you don't trust me. I don't want to be a burden to you anymore." "Isabel, don't!" Julian stepped forward, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "Don't say anything, Julian. Your silence has said enough." She pulled her suitcase to the door, tears streaming down her face. Julian didn't follow, and that hurt more than any words could. As the elevator doors closed, Isabel felt as though she were leaving a piece of her heart in that penthouse, the part that believed she and Julian could have a real future. She returned to her old apartment, a small but cozy space where she'd lived before everything changed. Sitting on her bed hugging a pillow, she let herself cry. She cried for Derek's betrayal, for the media's lies, but above all for Julian, for the love she had begun to feel, and the pain of believing he could never truly be hers. In that moment, Isabel didn't know if she could forgive him or if she had the strength to move forward without him. But one thing she knew, she wouldn't let the world define her. Not now, not ever. Julian Blackthorne's penthouse, once a symbol of opulence and power, now felt emptier than ever. After Isabel left, abandoning her wedding ring on the table like a silent farewell, Julian was consumed by an inexplicable void. He was accustomed to control, to running a business empire and keeping his emotions caged in iron. But Isabel's departure shattered those barriers, leaving him with a sense of loss he couldn't ignore. He had been wrong to let his silence push her away, wrong to fail to see that she needed him more than his PR team or cold solutions. In the days that followed, Julian threw himself into work with ferocious intensity, as if signing contracts or chairing board meetings could fill the emptiness in his heart. But each night, returning to the penthouse, he couldn't avoid the corner of the table where Isabel once worked, leaving behind colorful sketches and creative ideas. The wedding ring remained there, glinting under the light, a constant reminder of his failure. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the delicate silver band, and for the first time in years, Julian felt powerless. The truth began to unravel one morning when his PR team sent him a detailed report on the source of the smear articles against Isabel. They had traced financial transactions and uncovered a shocking revelation. The rumors about Isabel, from accusations of being a gold digger to claims she was involved with Derek, were orchestrated by a covert media firm hired by Margaret Langley, the mother of Sophia, Julian's late fiancée. In a leaked email, Margaret wrote, "I can't let some unknown girl tarnish my daughter's legacy. Sophia was Julian's only love, and I'll ensure no one replaces her." Julian read the email, rage and pain surging within him. He recalled the times Margaret had inserted herself into his life after Sophia's death, always emphasizing that no one could compare to her daughter. He had respected her, seeing her as a link to his past. But now he realized her actions weren't just about preserving Sophia's memory. They were an attempt to control his life, and worse, to hurt Isabel. This truth hit like a blow, forcing Julian to confront his mistakes. He hadn't protected Isabel, not only from the media, but from the shadow of the past he carried. Unable to wait any longer, Julian resolved to find Isabel. He knew she had returned to her old apartment, a modest space in Brooklyn where she lived before entering his world. He called her, but she didn't answer. He texted but received only silence. Finally, he went there himself, ignoring his assistant's protests that a billionaire like him shouldn't visit a working-class neighborhood without security. Julian didn't care. For the first time, he wasn't acting as a powerful man, but as a desperate one, yearning to right his wrongs. Isabel's apartment was on the third floor of an old building, the stairs creaking under Julian's steps. When he knocked, his heart pounded, a sensation foreign to a man who remained calm in multi-million-dollar deals. Isabel opened the door, her expression cold, though it couldn't hide her surprise. She wore an oversized sweater, her hair tied up, with unfinished design sketches scattered on the table behind her. She looked tired but radiated the resilience that had first drawn Julian to her. "What are you doing here?" Isabel asked, her voice firm, her hand gripping the doorframe as if to keep him out. "Isabel, I need to talk," Julian said, his tone low but urgent. "Please give me 5 minutes." She hesitated, her eyes scanning him, then finally nodded, opening the door wider. "5 minutes," she said, crossing her arms. Julian stepped inside, and Isabel's small apartment was a world apart from his penthouse. Walls covered in sketches, shelves overflowing with art books, and the warm glow of a desk lamp created a cozy, familiar space. He looked at her, his heart tightening as he realized she had reclaimed herself while he remained lost. "I was wrong," Julian began, cutting to the chase. "I didn't protect you, Isabel. I let you face those lies alone, and I was wrong to think silence was the best approach. I'm sorry." Isabel studied him, her eyes still wary. "Sorry for what, Julian? For letting me go, or for not trusting me from the start?" "I trust you," he said firmly. "I never doubted you, Isabel. Those articles, they weren't random. They were orchestrated by Sophia's mother. She wanted to ruin you, to protect her daughter's memory. I didn't know, and I should have found out sooner." Isabel blinked, stunned by the revelation. "Sophia's mother," she repeated, her voice trembling. "Why? I didn't do anything to her." "No, you didn't," Julian said, stepping closer. "It's my fault. I let my past hurt you. I wasn't strong enough to face it, and I made you pay the price." Isabel turned away, hugging herself, trying to process his words. She had spent the past days rebuilding her self-worth, convincing herself she didn't need Julian. But now, hearing him, her heart wavered. "So why are you here, Julian?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "To make amends? To ease your conscience?" "No," Julian replied, his voice low but brimming with emotion. "I'm here because I can't imagine life without you. I lost someone I loved once, Isabel, and I swore I'd never let that happen again. But I let you go, and that was my greatest mistake. Give me a chance to make it right. Please." Isabel looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. His words touched the deepest part of her heart, but the pain lingered. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "You can't just show up and say those things, Julian. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I was just a substitute. I need more than that. I need you to fight for love, not with power or money, but with your heart." Her words struck Julian like a blow. He stood there for the first time in his life, feeling utterly vulnerable. He stepped forward, taking her hand, though she tried to pull away. "I'll learn to do that," he said, his voice urgent. "I'm not promising perfection, Isabel. I'm clumsy with emotions. I've locked my heart away for too long, but I promise to try every day to be the man you deserve." Isabel met his gaze, seeing a sincerity she hadn't witnessed before. She wanted to believe him, to give them a chance, but the fear of being hurt held her back. "I need time," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "I need to know this isn't just another impulsive moment." Julian nodded, releasing her hand, though it clearly pained him. "I'll wait," he said. "However long it takes, I'll wait." He left, leaving Isabel with a storm of emotions. In the days that followed, she returned to her design work, trying to focus on herself. But Julian didn't fade away as she expected. He sent flowers to her apartment daily, not extravagant bouquets, but simple white daisies, the kind she'd once said she loved. He texted, not pressing, just short messages. "Passed a cafe today. Remembered you laughing when we spilled flour." Or "Tried cooking Italian tonight. Disaster, but I want to try again with you." These small gestures, free of power or wealth, brimming with sincerity, slowly melted Isabel's heart. She realized Julian was trying, not to atone, but to build something real. And deep down, she knew she still loved him. Loved the awkward but genuine man willing to learn to love for her. A week later, Isabel texted him, "Meet me at the old cafe, we need to talk." When Julian arrived, not in a suit but a simple shirt, she smiled. They sat down, and for the first time, they talked as two ordinary people, unburdened by the past or pressure. It was the first step in their journey to reunion, a path full of challenges but brimming with hope. A month after their meeting at the cafe, where Isabel and Julian began to unravel misunderstandings and rebuild trust, their lives found a new rhythm. Isabel returned to Julian's penthouse, but this time not as a jilted bride or a wife in name only. She came back as a confident woman, certain of her worth and ready for a relationship rooted in sincerity. Julian, through relentless efforts to learn to love with his heart, proved he was more than a powerful billionaire. He was a man willing to change for her. But both knew their journey needed a new milestone, a true beginning, untainted by the shadows of the past. Julian quietly prepared for this. One early morning, he invited Isabel for a walk in a garden on the outskirts of New York, claiming he wanted to discuss a special project. Curious but unsuspecting, Isabel agreed. When they arrived, she was stunned by the sight before her. A small garden bathed in sunlight, filled with clusters of white daisies and lavender, twinkling string lights draped over tree branches, and a petal-strewn path leading to a rustic wooden table. There, Isabel's family and closest friends, her parents, her sister Clara, and a few work colleagues stood waiting, their faces beaming with smiles. Gone was the extravagance of the first wedding, the hundreds of unfamiliar guests. This was a gathering of those who truly loved her. "Julian, what is this?" Isabel asked, her heart racing as she realized this was no ordinary outing. Julian took her hand, leading her to the center of the garden, where sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating his face. He knelt, a gesture that drew a tearful laugh from Isabel in her surprise. In his hand was a new ring, not the silver wedding band from their rushed ceremony, but a white gold ring with a small, elegant pearl, simple yet refined, perfectly suited to Isabel's style. His deep blue eyes gazed at her, filled with an emotion she had never seen before. "Isabel," he began, his voice low but clear, resonating in the quiet space. "The first time I stood beside you in a wedding that wasn't ours, I was a substitute, acting on a reason even I didn't fully understand then. But now I'm here, not out of pity, not because of the past, but because I choose you, with all my heart. You are light, strength, the person who makes me want to be a better version of myself. I want to spend my life loving and cherishing you. Isabel Hartley, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Isabel's cheeks, but this time they weren't born of pain or humiliation. She cried from happiness, from the feeling of being truly loved, chosen not as a fallback, but as the only one in his heart. She looked at Julian, the man who had once been an enigma, who had caused her doubt and hurt, but who now knelt before her. his heart fully open. She smiled, her voice trembling. "Yes, Julian, I'll marry you." The small crowd erupted in applause, laughter and cheers filling the air. But Isabel saw only Julian. He stood, gently slipping the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a tight embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for giving me this chance." The wedding ceremony followed right there in the garden, under the radiant golden sunlight. There were no crystal chandeliers, no designer gowns, no ostentatious rituals. Isabel wore a simple white silk dress that reached her ankles, adorned with delicate floral embroidery. Julian, in a white shirt and light gray vest, looked more approachable than ever. The officiant was an old family friend of Isabel's, Henry, whose warm voice and kind smile guided them through the vows. This time, every word they spoke carried profound meaning. "Isabel," Julian said, holding her hands, his eyes never leaving hers, "I promise to love you, protect you, and learn to be the husband you deserve. I promise not to let silence or the past hurt you again. You are my home forever." Isabel smiled, tears falling again, but she didn't wipe them away. "Julian," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion, "I promise to stand by you, to share every joy and sorrow. I promise to love you even when you're clumsy, and to trust you even when things get hard. You are my choice, today and always." When Henry declared them husband and wife, Julian leaned down, kissing her, not the ceremonial peck of their first wedding, but a deep, loving kiss filled with promise. The crowd clapped, and Clara, Isabel's sister, shouted, "Finally, a real wedding!" Laughter echoed through the garden, mingling with bird song and the gentle breeze. The reception unfolded in the same garden, with wooden tables laden with simple, heartfelt fare, homemade bread, fresh salads, and glasses of red wine. Isabel and Julian sat side by side, their hands intertwined, laughing and talking with family and friends. Isabel's father, Thomas, stood to give a toast, his voice thick with emotion. "Today I see my daughter happy, and that's all a father could ever want. Julian, thank you for choosing her, and Isabel, thank you for being strong enough to choose love again." Isabel leaned her head on Julian's shoulder, feeling his warmth. She looked around, seeing her mother Eleanor wiping away tears, Clara teasing a friend, and the people who loved her most sharing this moment. This wasn't the extravagant wedding she'd had with Derek, but it was everything she dreamed of, a ceremony overflowing with love, sincerity, and hope. As dusk fell, the garden glowed with twinkling string lights. Julian pulled Isabel to a quiet corner, where they could stand alone, looking out over the sprawling meadow. "Are you happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Beyond happy," she replied, turning to face him. "And you?" Julian smiled, a genuine smile free of restraint. "I've never been happier." He leaned down, kissing her forehead. "I love you, Isabel." "I love you too," she whispered, resting against his chest. They stood there under the soft glow of the lights, their eyes locked, as if the world held only them. In that moment, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with trust and devotion. The ceremony ended with a slow dance in the garden, as Isabel's favorite song played from a small speaker. Julian led her, spinning her gently, and as they laughed as they held each other, Isabel knew this was more than a wedding. It was the start of a new journey, where she was no longer the abandoned bride but a woman loved, chosen, and cherished forever.